What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, I'm going to show you how to replace all your timing chains and both of your head gaskets on your Ford 4.0 liter V6 engine. Two things I want to point out right quick. If you are working on a 2006 to 2010 Explorer or Mountaineer or Mustang engine, take a look at your harmonic balancer. Inside there's a weight and it's very common for the weight to break off. As you can see right here, the weight is no good, so I need to buy a new harmonic balancer. And secondly, I want to make my point very clear, just like I showed in my last video. This is why you remove the valve cover before you put a used motor into your car or truck. As you can see here, this rear cassette is just completely toast. So somebody could have bought this motor, put it in their car, and had noise as soon as they started it up. So always check those two things. As far as the head gaskets and the timing chains go, let's get started. So I ended up buying a 2007 Ford Explorer off Facebook Marketplace for $1,000. The guy said he was driving it and it quit going down the road. The motor only had 120,000 miles on it. It's unfortunate, it wasn't taken very well care of, and it jumped time and bent valves. So for all you people out there commenting saying that the 4.0 is non-interference, you are wrong. And today I'm gonna show you when I pull the heads off, you will see these valves are completely bent sideways. So being that the engine only had 120K on it, the bottom end is fine. We're gonna do head gaskets, put some valves in it, put it back together, and we're gonna put it back in a truck so we can get it on the road and actually use it. Okay guys, so just for demonstration purposes, as you can see, I put a little white mark on the 0 degree top dead center mark. We can line it up with our crank sensor. That way we know we're at top dead center. If you come to the driver's side bank, you can see our nub is sticking straight up. That's good. And then if you come to the back of the camshaft, you can see that the slot in the cam is parallel with the valve cover mating surface. Perfect. If you come to the front over here, well, oof, yeah, see that slot there is supposed to be parallel with the valve cover mating surface. It's not, which means the rear bank jump time. We have bent valves on this cylinder. So what we're gonna do first is get everything that's in our way out of our way. Now, please keep in mind at the top of the screen, you will see timestamps, little blips that'll take you to different videos I have up on my channel. The first video you're gonna see is how to remove a harmonic balancer. I'm not gonna go over it in this video, but if you click that video up above, it will be in-depth, detailed on how to remove your harmonic balancer, nice and easy. All right guys, with our harmonic balancer off, we can now take our front timing cover off. So under here, we have 5 10mm bolts, and then we have a series of 13 and 10s all the way around. Now what I like to use are these baggies. You go to the dollar store, you get a pack of baggies, and you can bag and tag every bolt. That way you know where everything belongs. So at this time, I'm going to start undoing all of our bolts, bag them, and we can get our front timing cover off. And make sure you have a bucket underneath because the block still holds coolant. I try to get out as much as I can, but we're definitely gonna have some pour out when we break this seal. If you have not yet taken off your thermostat housing, you're gonna have to do that now. That way we can undo these two clamps and take our front timing cover off. It's 3 8mm bolts. All right, all we gotta do is break the seal on the bottom, a little bit of RTV holding it. There we are. All right, so now that we have our timing cover off, our chains exposed, we can now start getting started on working on the top end. Okay, so here we are on the top of the motor. What I'm gonna start doing now is getting our fuel rail and our injectors out of here. Now, keep in mind the fuel rail does hold fuel. There is still fuel in here. 4 10mm bolts. We're gonna lift the rails up and pop our fuel injectors out. Okay guys, so with our fuel rail off, we basically have most of our accessories out of the way. What we are gonna start doing now is removing our old timing components. Now guys, please just get the toolkit. On eBay, Amazon, it's like $80, and you don't want to have to do this twice. You put new head gaskets and valves and bend valves because you're one tooth off because you didn't use the tools. I mean, you're going this far into it, just dish out the 80 bucks. If you're going to use it once, just put it on eBay and somebody else across the states will buy it. Trust me. So just get the toolkit. I'm going to hold this cam. We'll break loose our 19mm. Remember, this one's reverse thread. we can undo our tensioner and then pop our sprocket off, get our tensioner out of there. That way this cam is free, and then we're gonna repeat the same thing for over here. Hold this cam. This is regular lefty-loosey 19mm cam bolt. Remove our tensioner. We're just gonna start getting all of our timing components out of the way. All right, guys, first things first, 27mm rear bank timing chain hydraulic tensioner. I just use a big 27mm like this. Sometimes you really gotta Johnny Armstrong it, and sometimes it's hand tight. Yeah, that one was pretty loose compared to the others I've seen. So we'll just pull this out, get this out of the way, keep it to the side. It's up to you whether or not you want to reuse it. I never do. They're cheap enough just to buy new ones. Get this out of here. Good. And being that we are taking everything apart, I'm just going to do what I did with my other rear cassette replacement video. I'll use the vice grips, clamp down on the cam, and then we can break this 19mm bolt loose. And remember, righty-loosey, reverse thread. Stupid. Good. Break this loose. Remove our 19mm bolt. These are not torque to yield. You do not have to buy new ones. You can reuse these cam bolts, no problem. Keep it off to the side in a safe spot. Bolt removed. Sprocket. Keep that off to the side. I'm gonna get new sprockets anyway. And then look at this. Maybe I can fish her out. Here we are. Here's part of our timing guide. Busted. Your upper positioning bolt right here for your cassette is a T30. Take that out, keep that in a safe spot. We're gonna have to reuse this. Down here, T30 lower cassette pivot bolt. Take this one out. We're gonna reuse this bolt as well, but we're gonna get a nice new O-ring for it towards the end. So keep this in a safe spot. All right, so our back bank timing components are completely removed. We can now go ahead and do our driver's side. All right, guys, same spiel over here, 27mm front timing chain tensioner. Wow, that one's got some balls to it. All right, perfect. Remove this, keep it off to the side. Now we got to clamp our vice grips down going the other way because this is regular lefty-loosey. So up against the mating surface, clamp, 19mm. Perfect. Remove the cam bolt, keep it off to the side. Once again, you could reuse this. Done. It's garbage. We're gonna get new ones. Okay, T30 upper positioning bolt for your front cassette. You can take that out. The kits usually come with a new one, but save it in case yours doesn't. All right, guys, onto the front jack shaft sprocket. This is Big Bertha right here. This is an E18 external Torx. I got my socket at Harbor Freight Tools. It's cheap enough and you're only gonna use it once. We can crack this loose. Now, this sprocket's gonna wanna spin freely, so what I did was I took the shackle from my load leveler, run a through bolt, and then I bolted to the cylinder head. That way it holds the jack shaft sprocket. If you have a weak back, I suggest having somebody else do this because this really tests your morals. God almighty. Okay, this is a stretch bolt because you tighten this to 33 foot-pounds plus an additional 90 degrees. That 90 degrees stretches the threads. You cannot reuse this bolt, okay? Just get a new one. All right, so we could go ahead, undo our little chain that held it. All right, guys, we could start going ahead and taking our front timing chain guide and tensioner, or what's left of it, off. These two are 8mm, these two are 10mm. Throw the parts out, keep the bolts, put them in a bag so you know what goes where. All right, with our parts off, we can very easily slide our sprocket out, get it out of the way. We're gonna reuse it. Chain, if it's not ground down like mine is, you can reuse it, but I'll probably have to put a new one. And in order to get it out, what we do is slide the sprocket off. These sprockets are reusable. They're good for 400,000 miles. Then we can take our chain, keep it off to the side. And then right here, we have a 10mm lower pivoting cassette bolt. Remove that. Put that in your bag as well. Okay, guys, now listen carefully. In 2002, Ford shifted the head casting forward, making it extremely difficult to extract this cassette without destroying it or taking the head off. But the way to do it is you get right up underneath this little guide bushing right there, and just bend forward with a pry bar or a big screwdriver, you'll be able to clear the head and pull it out. Now, I don't know, because this cassette is absolutely obliterated, it might just pull right out. Like so. Okay, that's never gonna happen again. Of course it's on video and it happened. That's never gonna happen again. But I guess because it was so obliterated, it just pulled right out. Anyway, all you gotta do is bend it right at that bushing there and it'll clear, no problem. Okay, so all that's left for us is our two 8mm balance shaft chain guide bolts. Take those out, keep it off to the side. Down here we have a little present. I'm gonna have to try to fish that out. Okay, oh, and there's more presents over here, good. All right, a lot of fishing for me to do today. I'm not on the ocean, but I'm sure doing a lot of fishing. I'm gonna tackle the exhaust manifolds. Now, based where you are in the country, sometimes they can get real rusty or even snap right off. So what I'm gonna use is MAP gas. I'm gonna heat the hell out of it. These are 13mm. Now, what tends to happen is the nut will stay and it'll start pulling the thread out of the cylinder head, which is okay because then I just get new studs and I can thread them in. We'll have fresh studs all around, but some of them, the nut might start coming off, which is okay too, because in the end, we'll use our stud extractor. We'll pull them all out and we'll put all new studs in. All right, so top tip number one, these studs are M8 by 125 thread. So what I usually do when I'm doing 4 liters is I go on eBay and I get the 4.6 liter V8 Ford engine stainless steel stud kit. You'll get 4 extra, but that's okay. I put stainless steel studs, nuts, you'll never have a problem with them snapping off. They're cheap enough to order and good peace of mind. So I got this last nut loosened on our exhaust manifold. All the nuts came off except for one. The whole stud came out, which is fine. I'm gonna break this gasket free. There we go, beautiful. Exhaust manifold number 1 off. Now we can repeat the same exact process on the other side. And like you saw me doing in the video, work it back and then forward, back, forward, break the rust up, and definitely use heat. You don't wanna just go like that and just have the whole stud snap off because then that's gonna be a big problem. All right, everybody, so with both our exhaust manifolds off, what we can now go ahead and do is start removing our camshafts. Now, you have to be very, very careful with this. Don't just start removing the cam caps because you will warp the camshaft. So what I did here was I went around with some paint marker and just watch as I loosen, I numbered everything. So this is the order of loosening the cams. You could see 1, come all the way over across, 2, all the way over 3, all the way over to 4, and then cross again, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the order in which you loosen the bolts. That way you do not warp your camshaft. All right, so here we go. We got our 10mm with our breaker bar. I'm a deep socket kind of guy, but it's really actually easier to use a shallow socket on these cam caps. So follow my lead and we'll break them loose. Now we can go ahead, get our baggie, take all of these bolts out, put them in our bag. Now, nice thing what Ford did, if you look closely on the cam cap casting, they actually engraved the number. So back here you see R and L. R is for right head, L is for left head. So you have R4, 3, 2, and 1. That way you don't have to worry about getting your cam caps mixed up. But you do need to make sure that the roller followers end up in the same spot because you can't mix them up. Okay, so with our passenger side head done, we can now go and do the identical thing on the other side. We're gonna remove our cam caps. And again, I will show you the proper sequence for that side as well. Perfect, same deal. Remove your bolts, put them in a bag, take your cam off, and keep your roller followers together. So at this point in time, what we can do is now prepare to remove our cylinder head bolts. And of course, so you don't warp the head, there's another orientation, which I will show you right now. I marked in paint marker. So here we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I just want to make note real quick, it's a T55 Torx, okay? I use a ratcheting breaker bar with an impact rated T55. So follow the sequence, T55 breaker bar, and in the meantime, enjoy this montage of me struggling to remove these bolts.
I'm trying to do this.
What's wrong?
Won't freaking connect. That's so not recording. Right? Do something.
So it looks like the Lexus lived to see another day here. Is this your whip, dude? You probably can't even hear. Let's go in the car.
Alright.
Dang, it's nice in here, dude. How's the auto life?
Auto's fine. I just put it in 2 and floor it like Orion did. And I got the hydro here, which actually locks the rear.
Dude, this is actually pretty legit.
And yeah, my buddy ran all the lines and everything. I got the bucket seats, the harness bar.
I like this a lot.
The quick release. It's very roomy. I used to daily it. I used to put all my tires in here, but I finally got a trailer, so that's what I can do with it now. But you gotta see everything.
Oh boy, let's see it. This is literally Orion's old car.
No, if you could say Dan's Rods and Customs. It's all identical. I had to.
Oh, it's twin too?
Yeah, dude.
Oh my god.
I recreated everything Orion and Dan did to this car.
But it didn't catch on fire.
No, it did not. Yeah.
Never caught on fire.
It's still eBay turbos, but it did not catch on fire.
All right, once you got that done, you have these 2 8mm bolts on the inside of each cylinder head. You can just remove those, throw those out. It's a lot lower of a torque. You won't have to worry about it. It's only about 25 foot-pounds. It's an E12 external Torx. So these just pull right out. Okay, head bolts, throw them out. Only a dummy would reuse them. They're cheap enough to buy new ones. They're stretch bolts, they will snap. Order new head bolts. Do yourself a favor, save the headache. So I'm gonna remove all of these bolts, throw them right in the garbage. All right, gang, with all of our bolts, cams, everything's off the cylinder head, and we'll see what's hiding underneath, that's for sure. I think she's bent. I think she's bent. Oh, she's bent. She's bent. Oh yeah. All right. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't look like the 6th one hit. Let's take a look. Ooh. Oh yeah. Say it louder for the people in the back. Say it why am I yelling? Interference engine. All of them were hit. This one looks okay. 5 in a row, baby. Cooked. All right. As you can see, the notorious Ford 4.0 ding marks of the cam chain jumping time and smacking your valves. That's what you get. All right, guys. So once you got the heads off to the side, now starts the painstaking process of cleaning the block deck. Now, here's what I recommend you do. No sandpaper, no Brillo pads, no scuffing pads, no roll-lock bristle discs. What I recommend you do is you take a scraper, you get a pack of 25 blades, you get some brake parts cleaner, and you get some of this stuff here, gunk engine cleaner, and you just start going slowly, 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 no pressure. Just start working your way all around. Use your brake clean, scrape, paper towels, rags, keep cleaning. You can see it's coming out absolutely mint. So I'm 3 hours into it. I'm gonna keep going. Hopefully by the end of today, I got both decks cleared and all the pistons cleared, ready to go. Okay guys, so next we're at the back of the motor, rear jack shaft plug. Behind it is our rear timing chain sprocket, and it's a T55 Torx. Now you have two options here. You can actually leave the chain and do everything you have to do without having to buy a new jack shaft plug and a new rear jack shaft bolt, which is torque to yield. You have to get them from Ford. So you can actually reuse the bottom sprocket, leave the bolt alone, leave the plug alone, just put a new cassette and then put your new sprocket up top. Everything is good, but it wouldn't be a platinum video if I don't take absolutely everything apart and show you how it's done. So I'm gonna show you how to remove the back chain, back sprocket, back plug. Plug is very easy. Simply take a flat blade screwdriver, push in, take your hammer, we're gonna hammer it, and then we'll get behind it, pry it out. Plop. Done. Perfect. Now behind it, like I said, we have our T55, and the way I get this loosened, because now that we have the front jack shaft sprocket off, take a pair of vice grips, clamp the chain real tight. Beautiful. Now, for some people, you can use a breaker bar. For me, I'm going to use a Milwaukee. This is regular lefty loosey. Beautiful, just like that. Now we can remove our bolt, throw it in the garbage like everything else, and then fish out our rear jack shaft sprocket and chain, because our new timing chain kit is coming with a new sprocket and a new chain. You could throw these in the garbage. So unfortunately, I hear something rattling down inside the girdle, and I really didn't want to have to pull the girdle, but I have another gasket in the garage, and I might as well just pull it for peace of mind. So I just want to explain to you real quick how you remove your lower oil pan and girdle. Basically, your lower oil pan is self-explanatory. There's just a series of 10mm bolts. You get that out of the way, and it's always good peace of mind, because then you get to clean out the plastic debris and bits that have fallen down at the bottom and clogged your pickup tube. So right here, you'll have an 8mm bolt. You could get your pickup tube out of the way. And then you have a series of 13mm bolts, which you can remove. And then all around the perimeter, you have 10mm bolts. And then in the back, you have two T30 Torx bolts. Just put them in your bag. We'll take all the bolts out. We can remove the girdle, see what's making noise, and I'm gonna pressure wash it, get it nice and clean. Hilarious, because there was no need for them to use a T30 right here. You could have just easily used another 10mm bolt. I think they do things like this on purpose just to make your life harder. Oh, ow, that was nice and loose this time. All right, girdle removed. All right, guys, so basically I decided to pull the girdle, as you saw in the footage. and something told me to pull a rod cap, and I'm so glad I did, because this is what I found. Now, this is supposed to be shiny and smooth. It's like completely pitted. There was so many metal shavings in the oil that it just destroyed the rod cap bearings, and I pulled a crank bearing here, and yeah, look at that. Look at that thrust bearing. It's destroyed. So this project just went from a valve job and a head gasket to a major rebuild it needs. So I'm gonna try to find another parts explorer and pull a motor out of it and do timing chains and put the motor in my dad's truck. So with the magic of editing, I'll be done, ready for the next step. All right, what's up, guys? So here's what happened. I just want to give you a story real quick so I don't bore you guys to death. Basically, the other motor that you see in the first half of the video is trash, no good, bought it to the scrap yard. I pulled a crank cap and I pulled a rod cap, and the scoring is just out of control. So I knew that the engine would definitely have oil pressure problems once put back together, so I decided to scrap the idea and start fresh. So I got this block here out of this red Explorer right here, which ran perfectly, 128,000 miles, just rattled like crazy, which is typical, but everything looks good. I pulled a rod cap, everything is nice and clean. Cam caps are nice and clean, no problems whatsoever. So this is a different engine for the second half of the video. Follow along, everything is identical, just we got a different donor block. So let's keep going. Back on the 4.0 here. Two things real quick I want to make a mention of. Number one, what you want to do is you want to get yourself a nice table, spread out all your parts. You can organize everything, label everything, keep track of everything. So I got all my parts labeled and sorted out here. We'll know what goes where. If you come over here, you got your tools. Listen, cleanliness is next to godliness. So I got all my sockets, my Haynes manual, torque wrench, breaker bar, e-torques, and a bunch of other fittings and whatnots in this box here. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to work our way up. Follow along. I'll go through all the torque specs and how to do everything. All right, guys, balance shaft tensioner. Now that we have the girdle off, we can access these two bolts, which is an external Torx. It's an E11. All the time in the comments, I get asked, do you need the balance shaft? The answer is no, you do not need the balance shaft. You could just take the chain off, leave it there, or you can actually take the balance shaft off, and the two oil galley plugs, you could get plugs for it, fill it in. You can't leave them open though. You gotta get plugs underneath the balance shaft. Because I'm going over how to do everything video, I'm gonna replace the balance shaft tensioner and leave it intact. So you got your E11, loosen these two bolts. We got two. Okay, so we have our two E11 Torx bolts removed. Now, in order to get the chain off, we have to remove the keyway. Very easy to do. And also, if you leave the girdle on and you want to delete the balance shaft, I recommend taking the keyway off instead of cutting the chain. So I'm gonna show you how to do that now. All you have to do is very simply take a very thin screwdriver. You get it in between the keyway and the crank snout, and all you do is tap, and the beveled screwdriver will slowly start prying up on the keyway. So simple to get out. There we go. We have our keyway removed. Keep that in a safe spot. Now, to get the balance shaft chain off, all we have to do is very simply pop our balance shaft sprocket off the crank snout, like so. And then we can get our balance shaft chain while rotating. It will spin right off, just like that. So we have our sprocket, which we're gonna reuse, keep that to the side. And my kit came with a new balance shaft chain, so I'm gonna use a new one. All right, guys, first step in timing our 4.0 engine will be the balance shaft. Two things you have to make sure of real quick is that your keyway, which we have removed, will be at 12 o'clock. Here it's 6 o'clock because the engine is upside down. And if you look here, our number one piston is all the way to the top. So once you ensure that you have your engine at TDC with the keyway at 12 o'clock, we can go ahead and we can start putting together our balance shaft chain. All right, guys, on to timing the balance shaft chain. On the sprocket itself, there's two little hash marks. Now, I just put them in white paint marker for demonstration purposes so you could see easier. And then right here you have this little hole. So what we need to do is we need to line that hole up. Right here you'll see a seam. We need to line that up. And we need to line these 2 dash marks up with that hole right there. Now I will be honest, I have put these balance shafts together, not timed correctly, and there's no difference whatsoever. So you don't even really need to time it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate it. See, those 2 are lined up, but these 2 are opposites right now. So we'll go another revolution. Closer. One more. Beautiful. Now these 2 are lined up, and the hashes are lined up with the hole. That's how to time your balance shaft. All right, so once we have our balance shaft timed, installation is reverse of removal. Remember, with the engine at 12 o'clock, we don't really want to rotate the balance shaft or the engine in order to get the balance shaft at a time. One thing I'd like to make a mention of real quick, you want to make sure the slack is on the bottom because our tensioner is on the bottom. This should be nice and straight across, just like you see here, because this is where our guide rail goes. So with our sprocket back on, our balance shaft in time, our chain on, we can go ahead and reinstall our crankshaft keyway because we don't need it off anymore. All right guys, so I spun the engine upright just for demonstration purposes. Once I get the keyway in, I'll flip it back upside down. We'll continue with the timing of the balance shaft. So in order to install our keyway, it's very, very simple because they're self-centering. So all you have to do is put it in like that, eyeball it till it's center, and then we will go ahead, take our hammer, lightly tap, and you'll hear the noise change. That's how you know you're in all the way. Hear how the sound got much harder? That's it, you're done. So our keyway is in, chain is on, balance shaft in time. You go ahead, put our tensioner on, and our guide rail on. All right guys, with the engine flipped back upside down, we can go ahead and we can install our balance shaft tensioner. They line up over the existing bolt holes for the balance shaft mounting bolts. Okay, we could go ahead and take our 2 balance shaft bolts, reinstall them. The torque spec for these 2 bolts is 23 foot-pounds. Again, that's 23 foot-pounds. Little lesson here for you guys. This lower girdle oil pan assembly has these special threaded inserts. You're supposed to back them all the way out, put the girdle on, and then screw them in and torque them down to like a minuscule amount of torque. Then you can start putting in your reinforcement bolts and your perimeter bolts. Now, I don't have an Allen big enough to fit these inserts, and these inserts are massive. So what works just as well is a bolt, and the head goes in there, and you just turn them all the way out. You'll feel it bottom out. Then we can go ahead and put our girdle on, and I'll show you the sequence in which we tighten everything down. But if you do not follow this properly, you will snap this aluminum girdle. I've seen it before, and you don't want that to happen because your 2 lower bell housing bolts actually thread into the girdle as well. So follow my instructions and you'll have no problem. You won't have to worry about them snapping. Okay guys, back of the motor, you have your main cap, rear main cap right here. Now, down in there, you have old pieces of gasket material that you have to fish out, because if you look here on our new gasket, you have these little tabs, and they go down into there. So you have to try very, very hard to get as much of that old material out as you can. And if you can't get any more, that's fine. We'll use some RTV, and you can actually cut a little bit off of the tab, make it fit, and the RTV will seal the rest. Girdle installation, here we go. Follow my lead with the RTV. Start in a corner like this. Good. Come around over here. Same situation over there. Beautiful, just like that. Then we're going to put a dab here. Excellent. Finally, one more little dab right here. Beautiful. Now we can go ahead, get our oil pan gasket, make sure these nubs engaged and that our bolt holes are lined up. We can now go ahead and take our bag of 10mm perimeter bolts and start putting them in hand tight all the way around. Do not touch the threaded inserts yet. Okay guys, so with our perimeter bolts, 2 nuts, and remember the little Torx goes here, the long Torx goes there, installed. Do not tighten them down yet. This is critical. You need to align the back of the girdle with the block. They need to be flush or else it will leak. So you need to very simply take a straight edge, put it across the back of the block and the back of the girdle and make sure they're aligned. Once you have that completed, you don't need to worry about leaks and we could go ahead and start torquing down our perimeter bolts. The torque spec for the perimeter bolts is 89 inch-pounds. Because the torque is so low, I will be utilizing my 1/4 inch drive torque wrench set to 89. I will be going in a cross pattern, working my way around, and then double checking again. All right, so we got all our perimeter nuts torqued to 89 inch-pounds. We can now work on these stupid inserts that they have. So basically, I'm gonna take my bolt and I'm gonna thread it down until I feel it make contact with the crank main cap. Felt that one. 2, 3. Up against the crank main bearings, we could go ahead and we could start putting in our 13mm reinforcement bolts, get them all hand tight, and then I'll show you the torque spec and sequence once you got that done. All right guys, so of course there's a special sequence. I mean, why wouldn't there be? So I kind of wrote it out in paint marker. I'll take you guys for the tour. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we got 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is a 2-step torque sequence. First step is 132 inch-pounds. So you're gonna follow this sequence and torque those to 132 inch-pounds. Second sequence, 25 foot-pounds. I'm gonna do that now. All right, here we are on the bottom of the motor. It's time to install our oil pickup tube. Basically, we take it nice and clean, slip it right over the oil pump, like so. Give it a nice good push. Perfect. Now we can go ahead and we can tighten this bolt down to 89 inch-pounds. With our oil pickup tube installed, we can take our lower sheet metal oil pan with a brand new gasket and we can torque in a cross pattern all these bolts down to 89 inch-pounds. All right guys, so with the motor spun up right now, we're gonna start assembling our timing chains. So I have our front cassette chain and sprockets, and what I like to do is put a zip tie through that loop there, pull it tight, and it'll hold everything together while you're assembling the heads. So what we're gonna very simply do is fish it down into the block, like so. Please note the orientation of the lower sprocket here. The chamfered edge goes up against the jack shaft. And then what we can do now is get our 10mm bolt threaded in by hand. With the bolt in and hand tight, we are going to take our 10mm socket and we are going to torque it down to 15 foot-pounds of torque. We can now go ahead and install our balance shaft guide with the 2 8mm bolts. The torque spec on these bolts is 89 inch-pounds. All right guys, so with our balance shaft guide installed, the 2 bolts torqued to 89 inch-pounds, we could go ahead, take our front crank to jack shaft chain, lay it like so. Then we can take our front crankshaft sprocket, slide it over the crank snout, loop the chain around the lower sprocket. Then we could take our gigantic front jack shaft sprocket, the chain around it, and push it into position just like that. All right, so with our big jack shaft sprocket on, we can now go ahead and take our brand new bolt from Ford and hand tighten it. All right, with our bolt hand tightened, we could go ahead and take our jack shaft chain guide, put it into position, put in our 2 10mm bolts. The torque spec on these is 168 inch-pounds. All right guys, so next we can install our front jack shaft tensioner. Get your 2 little 8mm bolts and be very careful that you don't drop your bolts down in your oil pan. So once we get these 2 bolts started, hand tight, we're gonna torque them down to 89 inch-pounds. All right, so with everything in position, it's all starting to come together. We got everything torqued down, our front cassette's in. We could go to the back of the motor, get our chain, sprockets, and cassette, and get our lower positioning bolt torqued down. So we're gonna feed this cassette down into the cylinder head. Get everything lined up. You could see right through there is the bottom of our cassette. We'll get our lower positioning bolt and a brand new rear jack shaft bolt from Ford. All right, so our lower positioning bolt, we'll get it started. Always want to make sure you use a new O-ring because this is the back of the motor and it is not a place where you want this to leak. With the bolt hand tight, we could go ahead and torque it down to 15 foot-pounds. We can now go ahead and install our rear jack shaft bolt. I will leave all the part numbers in a description below for everything that you need. Why do you always gotta drive by whenever I'm in the middle of making a scene? All right, so if you take note, you have 2 dowels, one here, and then the same thing goes on the other side. Make sure they're in, make sure they're tapped all the way down. The dowels will help you align the head when you put the cylinder head on the engine block, and it'll prevent it from moving around. So make sure your dowels are in good shape, no cracks, nothing like that. And also, make sure your deck is absolutely perfectly clean. You do not want any oil, any adhesive remover, nothing. You want it as clean as possible because then you'll have a possible spot for your head gasket to fail down the road. So brake clean, mineral spirits, whatever you got to get rid of all the old oil and dust and film off your block deck. Get rid of it, clean it off. All right guys, so check your head gaskets. Once you pull them out of the packaging, most head gaskets will have an LH or an RH. That just corresponds to what cylinder head goes to which. LH, of course, is driver's side, RH is passenger side, and it's strange because it's not looking at the engine from like you're in front of the hood. It's like you're sitting in the truck and you're looking forward. LH, driver's side, RH, passenger side. So we can now very simply take our brand new head gasket, align it over our dowels, get everything lined up. Perfect. And now with our timing chain cassettes in, it'll make it a hell of a lot easier to put the heads on instead of having to fish the cassette down in the head. With our head gaskets in place, now is the time we've all been waiting for. We can grab our cylinder heads and gently place them over the block. And again, make sure these cylinder heads are in absolutely clean, perfect condition. Okay, now this is important. We're gonna torque one cylinder head at a time because what I like to do is spin the engine so the head is upright up here and then you get a better torque on it. So I'm gonna go through the process of installing your head bolts and torquing them down in sequence. All right guys, so to torque the head bolts down, I'll be utilizing some assembly lube. This is just some regular Lucas oil. You can get it at AutoZone. And now I will also be using 5W30 motor oil conventional. We're gonna be oiling the head bolts, and then we use this assembly lube and we put it where the head bolt surface mates to the cylinder head. And what this will do is instead of the 2 dissimilar metals binding against each other, they can now have lubrication and you will achieve a much more accurate torque in the end. All right, so as you can see, we're gonna go ahead, take our assembly lube, a little bit, just like that, beautiful. And you go around and do it for every one of them. Done with assembly lube, we can now go ahead and start lubricating our head bolts. Now to lubricate our head bolts, we have our cup of oil, our brand new head bolt. We are not going to dunk the threads into the oil. That is not what you want. All you want is a very, very thin coating of oil right at the bottom. So just a little dab, just like that, and that's plenty. Dab it in, and I'm gonna go around and do this to all of them. Okay, so once you got all your head bolts in hand tight, what we are going to do is we're going to torque the big guys down first. Now these two little 8mm bolts, those are not compression bolts. We're not going to worry about those until the end. So here's the sequence in which you tighten your cylinder head bolts. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the sequence in which you tighten your head bolts. Now it's a 4 torque sequence. First step, you do all of them 108 inch-pounds. Once you're done with that, 18 foot-pounds. Now once I do the 18 foot-pounds, I do them all again because I notice sometimes they loosen up a little bit because the head is starting to squish the gasket. So I do twice 18 foot-pounds in that sequence. Then we're going to rotate each bolt 90 degrees. And then again, 90 degrees. Like I said, once I do the 18, I'm gonna go around, click it one more time. See, it turns a little bit more. 1. Good, so we're done with our 18 foot-pounds now. Now we can go ahead and do our additional 90 degrees once and an additional 90 degrees twice, and it's going to help us so much now that our lubricant is under the head bolt. Okay, now in the store they sell these things where you can be perfectly, it's like a little dial with a rotation on it. It'll show you how far you went. I've never used one of those, and I build these 4 liters all the time. What I do is I take a little paint marker, okay, and you put a little dot at 12 o'clock on each head bolt. When you do 90 degrees, it'll be 3 o'clock. When you do the additional 90 degrees, it'll be 6 o'clock. And now I will warn you, it's not as accurate as using the dial, but I've never had a problem in all the times I've been building these Explorers. And for example, my green one over there, I did the same process. I think it took me to Canada. I think I have like 50,000 miles on that engine right now after I rebuilt it. And that was the first one I ever did. So I used a little paint marker, 90 degrees, and then additional 90 degrees. All these big guys are torqued down. Now we can go and do these 2 little 8mm external Torx head bolts. We're going to torque those down to 24 foot-pounds. And remember, this is an E11 external Torx. All right, guys, so basically this side is the exact same thing as this side, just now you're facing the other way. In order to trim the footage, I'm just gonna speed run me doing this. I'm already at 45 minutes worth of footage edited. I don't even know if YouTube's gonna let me have that much uploaded. So I'm just gonna put this head on, go through it, and it's the exact same sequence and torque specs as this side cylinder head. So good luck. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so I just finished my 18 foot-pound sequence again. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 90 degrees. Use your white paint marker, and then an additional 90 degrees, and you're good to go. All right, guys, so that's it. Our head gaskets are on, heads are torqued down, everything is good to go. I did those last 2 8mm bolts, again, to 24 foot-pounds. Now what we can do is start assembling all of our cams and timing components. So now that the heads are on, we can go ahead and snip our little zip ties that we put earlier to keep the assemblies together. See my orange one right there? I'll cut those, and then we can start torquing down the rear and the front jack shaft bolts. Once those are torqued down, we can start assembling our cams, roller rockers, and tighten our cam bolts down. All right, guys, first thing we're gonna do, front jack shaft bolt. The torque spec on this is 33 foot-pounds and then an additional 90 degrees. So again, we're gonna use our paint marker. Now, because we have our camshafts off still, we can actually rotate this engine and do no harm whatsoever. So if the crank does move a little bit while we're tightening it, it's no problem. We could just spin it back. So like earlier, the way I removed my jack shaft is I use my load leveler shackle, put this through bolt, and then I'm gonna bolt the chain to the cylinder head, like right here. That way it holds this gear while we're tightening it down. Once this is tightened, then we can go and do the back jack shaft bolt. .33. This is probably where the engine's gonna rotate. Yep, there it is, okay. I swear someone always comes home whenever I start recording. All right, guys, so now that we tightened our front jack shaft bolt to 33 foot-pounds plus another 90 degrees, I'm going to leave the shackle on, but instead move this bolt to this side over here somewhere, because we are going to tighten our rear jack shaft bolt to 15 foot-pounds plus an additional 90 degrees. So at this time, I'm just going to get this chain set up. Okay, front jack shaft sprocket is bolted down. Rear jack shaft bolt, 15 foot-pounds plus an additional 90 degrees. Okay, guys, so our front and rear jack shafts are now bolted down. Everything we have left is up top. We can now go ahead and install our camshafts. OTC 6488. I will show you how to use all the tools, how to get your motor in time. We'll start from the front. We got to get this claw looking thing right here, grab our harmonic balancer, and this is going to ensure that our motor is truly at top dead center. So very simply, all we have to do is push our harmonic balancer on a little bit. Then we can loosen up our claw, and it has these grooves specially cut out. Now my motor is perfectly in TDC, but I'm gonna move it just for demonstration purposes. So basically, if it's off like this, all you have to do is rotate counterclockwise. So this piece here sits right up against the block, like so. And now you are perfectly at top dead center. So with our first tool on, we can now go ahead. Yeah, this guy's got a really nice Dodge Viper. I don't know what he does for a living, but he's doing it right. Thing sounds so good. Anyway, we can start putting on our roller followers. You will see in the bottom of the roller follower, there's a little cup. Cup sits right over your hydraulic lash adjuster. And now we can grab our camshaft and very carefully place it down into position. Perfect, just like so. Okay, so here's a note I want to make real quick because I get asked this a lot in my 4.0 complete rebuild video. As you can see here, this center line is not parallel with the valve cover surface, so it's out of time right now. But the reason I have it out of time is because on this bank, one of the valves would be pushed down on a certain cylinder. So it's very, very hard to torque the cam down with the pressure of the valve spring pushing up on it. So I spin the cam backwards. That way all of our valves are closed. We can torque our cam caps, and then once everything is torqued down, we will take a pair of vice grips and we will spin the cam up into position, slide our tool from our OTC kit in there to hold the cam, and then we can go ahead with timing everything. So like I said, have it out of time right now so all the valves on this bank are closed. Go ahead and torque your cam caps, and then we'll spin it into the correct orientation. This is a two-part torque sequence for your camshaft bearing caps. It's 53 inch-pounds and then 144 inch-pounds in a specific sequence, and I will show you that sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll repeat that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 53 inch-pounds, then 144 inch-pounds. Okay, so I just finished my sequence of 144 inch-pounds. Now what we can do is get our cam gear up in place, and this is lefty-tighty. We can get our cam bolt. Don't even hand tighten it yet, leave it loose because we need this gear to spin like so. So now I'm going to repeat the exact same process for the driver's side. Now, as you can see here on the driver's side, This cam sits nicely parallel with the valve cover mating surface because at top dead center, all the valves on this bank are closed, so we do not need to worry about moving the camshaft afterwards. I just got the cam in place. Now I can go ahead and tighten it down to the sequence. All right, so with the driver's side cam torqued down, I just itched my nose and didn't realize I had oil all over my hands. We could go ahead and put our cam gear up into position, and then once again, start our cam bolt. Don't tighten it down because we need the gear to spin like so. Now what we could go ahead and do is install the upper positioning bolts for both our passenger and driver's side. This is a T30 and we are going to torque this bolt to 89 inch-pounds. In here we have our upper positioning bolt. I'm going to put that in now and torque it down to 89 inch-pounds. Take note that the built-in washer slips down into the groove of the cassette. It goes in and not on the outside. All right guys, let's time this darn motor, shall we? All right. Front of the engine, like I showed you, we have our harmonic balancer on with the claw tool up against the block. We're at top dead center. First tool we're going to take out of our OTC kit is this guy right here. Now there's kind of like half moons right here. You want the smaller one at the bottom, and then if you look up here, you'll see your cam nub is straight up. That's how you know you're at the correct orientation. All we have to do is put that tool right in there like so. And then included in your kit are 2 Allen screws. So we could go ahead and screw this unit down to the cylinder head. With it bolted to the cylinder head, we could go ahead and tighten down these 8mm screws. Good. And we could go ahead, take our 16mm, tighten this guy down right here. Now we're gonna go ahead, take this tool right here, make sure this is loose, do not tighten that down yet. We're going to slip the slots into the camshaft sprocket, and then we can put in the 2 Allen screws that are provided with the kit. With your 2 Allen screws tightened down and this center piece still loose, do not tighten these down yet. We're going to go ahead and install the tensioner that comes with the kit. This puts the correct amount of tension on the cam chain. Now do not try and use a wrench to tighten this down. This should go in most of the way by hand. As you can see, it's threading in just perfectly by hand. No need for the wrench. With our tensioner in, our tools on, we can now go ahead and tighten down these 2 10mm bolts right here. Now we can go ahead and torque our camshaft bolt to 63 foot-pounds. It's a 19mm. Done. With our camshaft bolt tightened down to 63, we could go ahead, remove our tensioner that we put in. And before removing any of the tools, we are going to go ahead and install our brand new hydraulic tensioner that came with our timing chain kit. All right guys, so located behind this plug right here is an oil restrictor rod. It looks like so. I've never seen them go bad, and I've never seen a cylinder head that hasn't had one in there. Basically, it restricts the pressure. You get better flow to your timing chain tensioner up front. Leave it in. You can replace it if you want. Some of the kits come with a new one and a new plug. I'm not going to because I know it's okay. So I just wanted to make a note of that real quick. Behind that plug right there is your timing chain oil restrictor rod. There is none on the passenger side. Now, a lot of videos on YouTube, I see people go ahead and they prime these tensioners by dunking them under oil, and you pump it up like so. Now that's fine, you can do that. I'm not going to, because what I do is once I put the motor in, I cut off spark and I crank the engine until I see oil pressure registered on the gauge. Once the timing chains are primed by using the oil pump, I go ahead and fire it up. Also, this motor is going to be sitting for quite some time before I find a use for it. So basically, I'm not going to prime them because the tension on it is just going to push the oil right back out. So here we have our tensioner. It's a 27mm. Again, it should thread in all the way by hand. You should not use the wrench at all. You have a chance of pulling the threads out of the cylinder head, and I see it way too often. The torque spec on this is 32 foot-pounds. If you don't have a big enough socket, you can go ahead and use a big adjustable wrench. Crank down on it real good, make it nice and tight. It doesn't really need to be that accurate because the crush washer is what seals the surface. Plenty. Perfect. Now we can go ahead. We can remove all of our tools on this driver's side bank, the 2 Allens in the front, 2 Allens in the back. Take these off, and we are going to time this head next. Okay guys, so earlier in the video, you heard me say that this cam right now is out of time because we had to make it out of time in order to torque down our cam caps. Here is what I mean by that. So basically you see the center line is going this way instead of parallel with the valve cover mating surface. And if you look, we can't get our tool in there because the grooves don't align. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take vice grips, clamp down on the cam, and we're gonna rotate it clockwise. And then slowly but surely, the center line is going to start coming down. And then once it's parallel, boom, we can slide our tool right in. And I'm gonna demonstrate that for you. So here we go, we got our cam, got our vice grips, clamp. And as you can see right now, the tool does not fit in because it is not parallel. So all we have to do, spin, 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 up. And then, boom, the tool fits right into position, no problem whatsoever. Now we could go ahead, unclamp our vice grips. We got our tool in place, and we can install our 2 Allen bolts included with the kit. With our Allen bolts installed, we can rinse and repeat. We're gonna tighten down these 2 little top bolts and tighten down our 16mm center bolt. Okay, back of the engine. Once again, take our back tool with these 2 bolts loosened, slide them into the crank sprocket, put in our 2 Allen bolts. With our Allen bolts tightened down, we can now go ahead and install our 27mm timing chain tensioner out of the toolkit and screw it all the way down. With our timing chain tensioner tightened down, we can now go ahead and tighten down these 2 10mm bolts. This will hold our sprocket from turning. We're gonna also torque this cam bolt to 63 foot-pounds, and please keep in mind that it's reverse thread, so it's lefty-tighty, and make sure your torque wrench clicks in reverse. Some of them do not. With our cam tightened down to 63, same deal on the back. We could go ahead and before removing the tools, take out the tensioner that comes with the timing tool kit and replace it with a brand new hydraulic tensioner out of your timing chain kit. And once again, this should thread in all the way by hand. No need for the wrench whatsoever, not until it's all the way down and you're ready for your final torque of 32 foot-pounds. With that tightened down, we could go ahead, remove the tools from the back and remove the tools from the front. Well, congratulations viewers. At this time, you now have a freshly timed 4.0 SOHC engine. Like I said, keyway, boom, 12 o'clock. Camshaft nub, straight up. Back center line, parallel. Front center line, parallel. And you can also gauge this thing is gonna be parallel as well. This little flat spot right here. So now that that's done, we can go ahead, install our timing cover, torque our bolts down. We got our valve covers, and we have our rear jack shaft plug, which I'm going to install right now. Jack shaft rear plug is so simple. Get it started, and I'm gonna take a dead blow with a rubber end, start tapping it into place. All we have to do is tap it in until it's flush with the back of the block. Beautiful, just like that, 100% done. All right, valve covers with brand new gaskets. I work outside, across, and then inside. Torque these bolts to 89 inch-pounds. I do it both sides, same sequence. Engine front cover bolts. We have the bottom 5 bolts. You can torque to 89 inch-pounds. I torque those first so it squeezes down against the gasket. Put a little bit of RTV right here and right here. And these bolts right here in a cross pattern torque to 168 inch-pounds. Okay guys, last but not least, we have our harmonic balancer. Now on my complete rebuild video, I got absolutely burned in the comments for putting it on using a rubber mallet, but that's literally the way you do it and it works. You have 2 options here. rubber mallet. Once you get it on enough, you can put your brand new crank bolt in and start tightening it down, and it'll pull the harmonic balancer on the rest of the way. I don't like using an impact to run the bolt in because I don't want the threads pulling out of the crankshaft. You'd be absolutely done for if that happens. So tap it on and then use the wrench with the 19mm and have it pull this harmonic balancer on. Or option 2 is you get a large piece of threaded rod, thread it and have it bottom out in a crank, and then you put your puller on and tighten a nut down that's on this piece of threaded rod. I'm gonna go over that in another video, how to install a harmonic balancer on a Ford 4.0 SOHC engine. As far as the harmonic balancer goes, the torque spec on this is 33 foot-pounds plus an additional 85 degrees. I just go 90. I mean, who can eyeball 85 degrees? Use your white paint marker like we have been on the rest of the engine assembly. Now, guys, please rotate the engine by hand before you even put it in the car. There should be nothing binding, nothing hitting whatsoever. It should spin freely. We have our spark plugs out, so we won't be fighting the compression. And absolutely make sure none of your pistons are contacting your valves. If they are, you did something wrong. You need to recheck your timing. Crank it over by hand. Also, I'm gonna put some WD-40 in the cylinders. That way they don't rust, they don't dry out. We'll get some brand new spark plugs, and I can't wait to hear this motor run. I'll make mention of this real quick. If your engine's out, you can do it. If it's still in a truck, obviously you can't. Rear main seal, the top of the screen, another timestamp, a blip, take you to the video, how to install a rear main seal on your Ford 4.0 engine. All right, guys, that's it for me. My name is Nick. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It took me so long to make, so long to edit. So if you did enjoy it, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and stay tuned for the next video. Peace.